building your exposure. Of everything I teach today, this is, I think, probably the most important thing. If you get this down, you're going to do just fine with your flash photography. And it's simple as a two-step process. Set your base exposure, and then bring your flash along for the ride. Of course, there's lots of little button pushing along the way, but let's watch this. And all right, so now we're going to shoot a portrait. I've got Bergen over here. He's going to be my model for a few minutes as I talk about building an exposure. So when you're doing flash photography, you always need to think about two exposures. One is the ambient light. How bright do you want that ambient light to be? And then the second part is your flash exposure. How bright do you want the flash to be? So I think about it like building. You know, you're building them up. One of them is going to be this bright, and the other one's going to augment. It's going to be that bright. So I start out generally by thinking, how do I want the background to look in my final exposure? Do I want my background to be dark, kind of like a moody type of feel? Do I want my background to be bright and vibrant, kind of a high key type of a look? And we'll be changing that throughout the day, so I'm not going to make necessarily a decision right now. But once I get that background exposure set, the next thing is now I want to bring the flash in, and so the flash looks like it's a normal part of the scene. You generally don't want your flash to, say, overpower your subject. You don't want it to look like a flash photo. For these first few photos, though, they're going to look like flash photos until we kind of refine it and fine-tune it. So let's go ahead and start building the exposure by working with ambient light. Okay. So I'm going to go through the systems and make sure everything is communicating first of all. The first thing is I'm going to turn on the flash and just make sure that the flash is set properly. So I, again, set it for remote. And I'm just checking the channel and group. I'm in channel 5, group A. And currently here on the top it says remote M, meaning this flash is set up to be a manual flash. How do I know that it's a manual flash? Well, it's being controlled here by the camera. So I'll go here into the camera body and just make sure that everything is set properly there so I can start building the exposure. I'm going to go down to group A, that's manual flash output, and currently I'm at 1/16 power, all right? So first thing is I need to set the exposure for the ambient light. So I'm going to aim my camera over subject and I'm going to look at it, and I'm setting my shutter speed and my aperture until I'm basically zeroed out. So let me do that. And here you can see I'm at f5, I'm at 1/250th of a second, and I'm at ISO 200, which means and you can see in the middle here, I'm zeroed out. My exposure is zeroed out. So if I want, let's say, more depth of field, I want the background, let's say, to come more into focus, I can use a smaller aperture, maybe like f8. If I want the background to be blurrier and softer, I can go a bigger aperture. Well, in this case, the lens I have maxes out at f5. So we'll leave it at f5 for now, because I like that kind of separation that we get from a bigger aperture. Next is shutter speed. So shutter speed controls the brightness of the ambient light in your flash photos. And as I move my shutter speed down, let's say do it like a 60th of a second, you can see that the background or the ambient light gets brighter. So now I'm at like +2 and 2 2/3 stops, almost +3. So let's take some pictures without the flash and show you how I'm controlling the ambient light. I'm going to start out zeroed out. And so that's at f5, basically a 2/50th of a second. And I'm just going to turn the flash off and just take some ambient light shots with no flash. All right, here we go. First shot, 1, 2, 3. You can see in this exposure that it's a nice looking shot overall. The ambient exposure is perfect. The colors in the green and the background are great. The exposure on his face is fantastic. But as you work more in portraiture, you're going to start realizing that, yeah, we do have some shadows underneath the eyes. And that's where the fill flash is going to come in just a minute. Well, let's say I wanted the ambient light to be a little bit darker. Well, that's an easy move. And I'm going to either bring my aperture down or bring my shutter speed up, a faster shutter speed, or I can bring my ISO down, maybe ISO 100. So before I do that, we need to start talking about flash shutter sync. Most cameras synchronize up to a 2/50th of a second shutter speed, okay? This camera syncs to a 2/50th. Some of the other cameras that I have in the Nikon world, also other Canon cameras, Fuji, Sony's, some of them only sync up to a 200th of a second. So I'm kind of always working with this maximum shutter speed at a 1/250th of a second. I don't really want to go beyond that or above that because the flash won't actually work if my shutter speed is too fast. So I'm going to keep my shutter speed at a 2/50th of a second. And I'm going to reduce my ISO. I'm going to go down to ISO 100. So I'm pushing my ISO button, and I'm going to bring that down to ISO 100. And I'm going to take another picture, and this should be about 1 stop underexposed. All right, Bergen, here we go. Excellent. I look at that photo, and sure enough, it's much darker. It's a stop darker. So maybe you want to do that. You want to do that so the background doesn't compete with the subject. So when you bring in the flash kind of lights them up. Let's take another exposure, this time brighter. I want the background to be brighter. I don't want to go above a 2/50th. So to be brighter, I have to go longer shutter speed, right? So maybe something like a 1/25th of a second. So we take this picture. Awesome. And now the background is brighter than before. So those are the thoughts that are going through my head. Do I want the background to be brighter? Do I want it to be darker? It's kind of a cloudy day. It's a kind of a dingy day, and so maybe to make the photo have a little bit more life, a little bit more vibrancy, I'm going to overexpose the background a little bit. So we'll start there. We'll start with the background slightly overexposed. All right, now it's time to add in the flash, okay? So I'll turn my flash on, and if you recall, I'm in manual exposure mode, and I'm at 1/16th power. I'm shooting direct flash right now, just to show how the flash impacts the photo. I'm basically gonna shine it towards his face. I don't have any diffusion or anything else along those lines, just direct flash. So we'll take our first picture here. All right, this is for real. And we hear our flash beeped. Yes, we did add flash, and it's quite a bit different than the last exposure because now we're filling in the shadows underneath the eyes. So now the goal of the photographer is to say, is it too bright? Is it too dark? I'm looking at that image and going, you know what? It's slightly too bright. It's pretty obvious we used flash. So I'm gonna bring down the flash power. So I go back here into the menu, go down to flash options, and I was at 1/16th power. I'm gonna bring it down to basically 1/32nd power, and I push the OK button. So I was at 1/16th, now I'm going down to 1/32nd. So it's basically half the amount of energy from the flash for the shot. All right, buddy, here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, and now I'm gonna compare the two. Not a whole lot of difference, but if you look at it with a critical eye, you'll see that bringing the flash power down did have a significant impact on the brightness of his face. I'm gonna shoot one more picture and go down to 1/32nd power. I'm sorry, 1/64th power. I was at 1/32nd, now I'm gonna go to 1/64th. And I'll push the OK button and take that picture again. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Cool. And now we're at 1/64th, and you can see the shadows under his eyes starting to return, and we're losing a little bit of the pop and the vibrancy that the flash provides. So really probably where I'm gonna end up is somewhere between that 1/64th power and that 1/32nd power. But you can see now building the exposure. You start out with the ambient. You start out with how you want the ambient light to look, and then you bring the flash in, and you bring the flash up or down based on what you want the subject to look like. So building the exposure. Cool, right on. So that, there's a little bit of duplication with from what I said leading up to the video, but you see that building the exposure, starting with the ambient and then filling in the flash. What I did there was I was in manual flash mode, so I wasn't using the TTL mode, I was using manual mode, and I was using the Nikon radio system. But I want to make a point here is that, on your inexpensive flash, this is that $29 eBay flash here, you can do the same thing, you just can't control it from the camera body, you have to control it from the flash itself. So here I've got you can see this one's currently set for 1/128th power. So if I wanted to make those changes I was making in the field, I just got to go over here to the flash and push up or down with my selector here. And so this requires you to have to actually physically go to the flash head to make the change. It's this simple. I mean, it's as simple as the overall process here is simple as setting your ambient exposure and then setting your flash exposure. And it's a creative decision. How bright do you want these things to be? I'm already anticipating a question, and I'm sure someone on the internet has already wrote in and said, hey, what about a handheld flash meter? Why don't you use a handheld flash meter to figure out your flash exposure? I have a handheld flash meter. It's a Sekonic, and it's great. It works great. But over the years, I've just gotten used to looking at my exposure on the back of the camera and just deciding this is good or this is not good, especially now with RAW. It used to be back in the early days of digital, even with digital RAW, if I missed my exposure by, I don't know, a half a stop or more, I couldn't really use the photo. But man, now with the post-processing software that we have and with shooting 14-bit RAW in most of our cameras, there's a huge range of post-exposure adjustments that we can do. So I don't worry too much about getting it nailed on perfect. And the truth is also what a light meter does is it just tells you what a medium brightness exposure should be. Maybe you want your medium brightness exposure to not be medium brightness, so it needs to be a little bit darker, a little bit brighter anyways. So over the years, I've just kind of not used my handheld light meter. Another reason why I haven't used it is because with all of this wireless control, the flashes put out multiple pulses of light. They almost all do a pre-flash, and then they do a real flash. Well, the light meter measures all of those pre-flashes, and it never gives you an accurate measure for the TTL anyways. So set your ambient, set your flash. So setting your ambient exposure, decide what the mood is. What mood do you want? If it's a dark and dingy day, you may have to add light. You may have to go more than a medium brightness exposure to make it feel like it was taken in Cabo San Lucas, versus cold winter wherever you're at. Set your ISO. Okay, so set your ISO at some value. Don't use auto ISO for this type of stuff. Just set your ISO for, let's say, 100. I forget in the video, was I at 100 for, I think it was at 100, 200? Okay, so I set it for 200. And then set your aperture. What do you want for your depth of field, right? Do you want a very narrow depth of field? Then go f2.8. Do you want to incorporate some of the background? Then go more like f8. And then set your shutter speed. And just keeping in mind, you're limited to a 2/50th of a second or a 200th of a second on whatever camera you have. Once those are set, then we're going to go into the flash. And so now your flash only, this is an important concept, I know it's a basic concept, but your flash only impacts your subject. The flash doesn't impact the trees in the background. It doesn't impact the city skyline a mile away. The flash only impacts the subject. And so maybe that's a flower, maybe that's a person, maybe it's the dog, whatever. So now adjust your flash power until you like how the subject is balanced with the background. This is the power of off-camera flash photography. You can put your subject in a deep shadow, and the background can be full bright sun. And now you can illuminate your subject so that the same level, the same brightness as the background. In fact, you can make the subject brighter than the background or darker than the background. With shutter speed, you can make the background darker or brighter. See that? Now you have this full control. You can make them both bright, both dark. You can make one brighter, the other brighter. I'm getting goosebumps because I'm excited about it. This is the power of off-camera flash photography with just one flash. It gives you full control over your total environment. And then finally, take a picture and then take a look. A lot of people are afraid to experiment when you have a paying customer on set. It's okay. Your customer doesn't know any better. All you got to say to your customer is, hey, let's work with me a second. I'm just experimenting to see if you look better in a brighter light versus a darker light. They don't know that you have no clue where you're starting out your exposure. Oh, shoot, I took that at full power. Oops. And you can joke. I always joke with the customer. I show them the really bad shot sometimes, and we laugh about it. It just loosens everything up. A lot of aspiring professional photographers are afraid to experiment when they're on location. But I'm here to tell you it's okay. When I shoot a portrait session, I'll shoot hundreds of photos, but the client only gets maybe 10 or 20 when I'm all said and done. So Take a shot, look at it, and then adjust. Take another shot, look at it, and adjust. Finally, you'll kind of dial it in, and then life is good. So just some things about this. Aperture. Let's just say that your flash is set for half power, okay? And you decide that you want to keep the flash at half power. If you change your aperture, you're reducing the amount of flash that gets into the camera. Okay, aperture controls how much of that flash gets into the camera. Shutter speed does not. Shutter speed does not control how much flash gets into the camera. Shutter speed is actually open a very long period of time compared to how much time the flash pulses, okay? So shutter speed, we think through that. Shutter speed controls the ambient brightness. Aperture controls how much flash goes onto the subject, okay? And the more you practice with this, the more it'll make sense. But if you've never heard of that concept before, this is a really important slide as well.
Okay, so you kind of answered this, but Heather Mayer had asked, hey Mike, does the power of your flash depend on the proximity of your subject?
Okay, Heather Maher, she's a bud. Hi Heather, so cool you came in today. So does the, I got all sidelined by Heather. So say it real quick.
Does the power of your flash depend on the proximity of your subject?
Yes.
To the flash?
Yes, close counts. It's super important, close counts. I'm gonna go to the demo side over here. When I do off-camera flash photography, I make sure that the system, the lights, are as close to the subject as possible, okay? And the reason why is because when it's here, let's just say I'm getting full energy from the flash. If I move 1 foot away, so let's say I'm at 0 feet, I'm getting full energy from the flash. When I move 1 foot away, I lose not just half, but I use, the ratio is 1 over the distance squared. So easy math here. Let's say I go 2 feet away. 1 over 2 feet squared, that's 1/4 power. So by going from here to 2 feet, I get 1/4 the energy available to me. When I go to 4 feet, what's that? 16th. I see you all like, I'm not a math major, that's okay. So you get 1/16th power. If I go 10 feet away, 1/100th of the power available to me is gone. So you gotta be close. Keep the system close. Another advantage of being close is you get the softness of it. The closer you are, the more the light wraps around the subject. The farther away, the harder, the more specular the light is. So this is a fantastic question. Keep it close.
Is flash generally more effective at lighting your subject, reducing under eye circles, et cetera, than a reflector? Is flash just more powerful? So can you talk a little bit about the two?
Yeah, they're both great. And the truth is, I think I probably shouldn't have done this earlier. I kind of poo-pooed being an available light photographer. There's nothing wrong with using available light to your advantage, and I do it all the time. To be honest, sometimes the best flash photo is not using a flash. Sometimes the ambient light is beautiful, and so let's work with that ambient light. Seriously, using a reflector can produce the same quality of light as using a flash. So really the answer to her question is it depends. There's no great answer here. I use reflectors a lot. I love them, especially like on the beach where you know the sun is going to be out, the sun is going to be hard, and I can just use that sun and reflect it right onto the subject. I can get professional, sellable images with just a reflector. Both of them will light up the shadows. The key with the reflector, though, is, or sometimes the difficulty with the reflector is, they're hard to position if you're a one-person show. It's hard to, you have to have the right type of equipment. And actually, I'm going to riff off of that question real quick because I've got this really cool product that you guys might want to use. If you are a one-person show and you want to use reflectors, either reflectors with flashes or just reflectors on their own, get something like this. This is a reflector, basically a reflector bracket, and it mounts on a light stand just like that. And then whatever size reflector you have, you can mount it here in this with these little clips. Okay, so this will actually hold that really tall reflector, that scrim. but also you can use it and you can point it up, you can point it down, you can point it at any of these other angles. So this is made, this particular one, this boom arm, it's a reflector boom arm. This is made by PhotoFlex, but lots of different companies sell these. And I'm really happy I purchased this. It wasn't cheap, but over the years when I'm trying to do the work by myself, I need another hand out there. And this is my third hand, basically.
Great. Mike, for people who are new, what is the difference between TTL and iTTL?
Great. Each camera manufacturer, well, at least Canon and Nikon, they all have their own proprietary name for TTL. So TTL is like the overarching term for through the lens metering. It's basically an automated flash metering system, okay? The Nikon world calls it iTTL for intelligent TTL. So iTTL. Nikons are intelligent. Canon calls it eTTL. I'm not a Canon shooter, so I don't know exactly what the E means, and I hate to, I won't even make it up. So it's eTTL. That's the Canon system. And I'm sure Fuji and Sony, they each have their own little take on TTL. But at the end of the day, what it is the flash and the camera work together to automatically figure out how much light should go onto the subject. And the way that that works is the camera says, hey, flash, send out a pre-flash. Boom. So it sends out this pre-flash. It hits the subject and then bounces back into the metering system, and the camera goes, oh, I see how much light was reflected in the pre-flash. So now when I do the real flash, put out whatever percentage of power. So iTTL, eTTL, TTL, and whatever other system is out there. It's all just TTL with their own little take on it. I'm excited about this next segment because this is there's a lot of nitty-gritty here. There's a lot of very useful content that I'm going to be sharing next. And that is shooting on a sunny day, shooting on a cloudy day, and then talking about on-camera flash versus off-camera flash. So the first thing I have is talking about shooting when the sun is out. You've all heard this term before, overpowering the sun with your flash. Can you do it? And I remember when I first kind of got into flash photography, I'm like, really? The sun's pretty bright. Can you really overpower the sun? And the answer is yes. Even with one little flash, you can make your exposures, your ISO, your aperture, your shutter speed, and your flash power. You can make it all just so that you can work with the sun. In fact, given enough flash power, you can even make the ambient light almost completely black on a bright sunny day and illuminate your subject. So that's what I want to show you how to do. Now, a little bit of truth telling. When we did the pre-shoot, we scheduled the pre-shoot months and months in advance. And of course, it was bright and sunny the day before, and it was bright and sunny the day after, but the day we did the pre-shoot, it was cloudy. So I didn't do a pre-shoot photo in the outdoors. Rather, I did my own shoot photo in the outdoors, and that's what I want to show you here. So here I'll be using a different model than our parkour athletes who are with me up in Seattle. So let's talk about a few basic tenets of shooting on a sunny day. So the first one is that shutter speed thing again. We're always fighting that maximum shutter speed sync, and it's about a 250th of a second, okay? When it's sunny out though, a lot of times there's just, even at ISO 100 and at f5.6 and at a 250th of a second, there's too much ambient light. So we have to find a way a lot of times to decrease the amount of ambient light coming into the camera. And we do that through using either an ND filter, or we use it using high-speed sync, where we can actually go beyond a 250th of a second. So we're going to teach those actually in the third segment of the day. I'm going to show you how we use an ND filter or the high-speed sync. For the examples that I have showing here next, this photo, this was taken with just literally my D500, a kit lens, and on a bright and sunny day. So I was just shooting a behind-the-scenes photo here just to show you the general setup, so don't mind the smile. The smile is it's a bright sunny day, and that's one of the problems with working outside is the person is almost always squinting. And so we're going to talk about how do we arrange the person so they're not squinting all the time. But here you can see basically we've got a model, we got a guitar, I'm using a light stand and an umbrella and my flash. It's that simple. And if you look at it closely, if you start breaking down the light, you can actually see the rim light over the shoulder and the rim light off of the legs and the rim light on the hair. So that tells you right away the direction the sun is coming from for this image. I'll talk about this a lot today, especially in the segment, is in general, the rule is you want the sun to be behind the subject, okay? If the sun is behind the subject, it creates a nice rim, and then your flash is going to be opposite the sun, filling in the shadows. And creating the nice catch light in the eyes, okay? And I'll show you an image here in, I think, 3 or 4 slides that shows you when you do this wrong, what that looks like. Okay, so this photo on the right side was taken with no flash. The photo on the left side was taken with flash. And right away you actually probably have to look kind of closely at it to see, was flash used? You can see the photo on the left is a little bit brighter, a little bit snappier, but it's really subtle, isn't it? Very subtle. In fact, that's the way I like my flash photography. I don't always like my photos to look like a flash was used. I want the flash to be gentle, kind, soft, and just produce a nice little catch light here in the eyes, okay? So this is a very subtle use. In general, I think my settings here were a 2/50th of a second, probably ISO 100 or ISO 50, very low. And then you can see the background is quite a far distance away, so it's nice and blurry. I like that. Okay, here's another example of just a little bit wider angle. So earlier in the previous segment, I think you were asking about, the background. Is the background in shade? Is the background in sun? Well, in this case, the background is actually in shade. I've got sun filtering through the trees, but I chose for this example to have the background dark. And that was a creative choice. When the background is dark, you can then light the subject so the subject kind of stands out from the background visually and also from a brightness perspective. So the photo on the left is no flash. You can see she's sad. No flash, sad. The photo on the right with flash. Flashes bring smiles to everybody's face. And you can see it's just a nice kick of light, just a little bit more oomph, pizzazz, a little more modeling, a little catch light in the eye. Fantastic. So let's break this shot down a little bit. So you can see I used fill flash. You can see that this is an umbrella. It's actually a silver umbrella. What do you notice about the sun? Well, here the sun is striking the side of her face. So I didn't have the sun directly at her back. Is it bad? No. Is it good? No. The point is it's there. And so just recognizing that the flash is striking the side of the face, understanding how to fix it if it is a problem. Maybe the person has a mole, or maybe they've got some hair growing out of their ear, something that wouldn't look that great. So now you know the solution. The solution is just to turn them more away from the sun to prevent it from happening. In this case, I don't mind it that much. It's hitting her ear in her earring. Those things are okay. More importantly, though, and the neat thing about putting the sun behind is you get a free rim light. It's like having another piece of lighting equipment in your studio that you didn't have to pay for. And that's what you get when you shoot on a sunny day, is you get a free rim light. So put the sun behind the head, or, these are ors, or move the subject to the shade. Put the subject in the shade with the background in the sun. So I'm imagining, let's go to the beach. Let's go to San Diego, California. And let's put the subject underneath a palm tree, so they're in the shade, but then you've got the boats or the beach or whatever there in the background. Then you're going to bring your flash up so that person is balanced well with the ambient light in the background. Another option is maybe you are on like an open plain where there's no trees, there's no buildings to cause shadow. In those cases, you might need to use a scrim to shield them from the direct sunlight. Here's an example. Let's pretend that we're at the, let's go to Space Needle. So we're at the Space Needle, and we want to shoot a portrait from this position, and the Space Needle's behind them. And you have to use this positioning for the photo that you want. Well, unfortunately, for this photo, the sun is shining on your subject's face. In that case, you have to use a scrim. You got to block the light from the sun so that it's only nice, soft, diffuse light. Then you bring in your flash to cause the shaping and the modeling that you're after. So sometimes you can't physically get the subject turned away from the sun. That's where the scrim comes into play. So a scrim is an advanced tool, but it's not a complicated tool. Like most things in photography, it just takes a little practice, a little trial and error, and then you'll put it to work in the real world, and you'll get great results. So let's look at what happens when you don't position the sun behind them. Again, frowny face, squinty eye, right? So here the sun is shining across their body, right? It's on the guitar, it's blowing out the details on the guitar. Right here underneath her eye, on her cheek, that's all blown out. Not a good positioning for the ambient light. So literally, by having her turn her back to the sun, and then me going around and shooting with the sun behind her, it fixes almost all of those problems. Sometimes if your subject, a female subject primarily, if she has longer hair and it's not like up in ponytails like this, sometimes the longer hair can actually shield the face from the sun, so you have a little bit more room to work with the positioning of the body. They can turn this way and they still not get the sun on the face. But I'm always watching that very closely. And back to your question earlier, watching out for those blinkies, making sure you don't blow out any critical surfaces like skin, face, that type of thing. If you're a wedding photographer, generally you don't want to blow out anything on the front of the dress because it's all sequins and the bride paid a lot of money for that dress and she wants to see the detail. So just be careful you're not getting sun in the wrong places. So let's do a quick example. Let's shoot with the sun here in the studio, and let me, is that where we're at? Yeah. So the next thing after this will be the cloudy day. So I want to just do a quick example. I need an audience volunteer. Anybody volunteer? You'll do it? All right, come on over. And let's turn the light on. You want me to grab it? Okay. And I'm going to have you stand about right here. So what was your name again?
Xavier.
Xavier.
Yeah.
I'm Mike.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, man. All right, so go ahead and stand about right here. And yeah, stand just about like that. Perfect. This is a good starting point. And before we get shooting, I got to move some of my gear over here and move my tethering computer over so we can show the results of this. All right, Xavier. So let's see, what I want to show on camera here. First of all, I'm going to walk up close to you. We got the sun behind you, and you can see the sun is striking across the front of his body, okay? So if you just turn this shoulder towards me, yep, even turn again, or even more, there you go. And now we can see, we don't really have a camera on that side. Actually, we will once I move this umbrella out of the way. And now we can see this side of Xavier is in shade, and we're getting this nice rim light off the shoulder. As simple as moving and rotating to where the sun is, it's that simple, seriously. So real quick, I'm going to have you rotate again this way, keep coming around. All right, cool. So I'm going to take my first picture, my first shot with no flash, okay? I'm building that exposure, right? Make sure I'm tethered. Things look good. All right, cool. So I'm going to start building my exposure, and I'm going to do it with Xavier in the poor light. He's oriented in the wrong way, but just to show you what's going on. This isn't the real sun, obviously, so my ISO is going to be a little bit higher. So I'm going to start my ISO at ISO 800, okay, ISO 800. If I was outside, that would be much more like 100. But since it's a studio light, we got to be a little bit higher. I'm going to be at f5.6, and I'm going to start out at 1/250th of a second. Make sure I'm zeroed out there. So I'm at 1/250th of a second. As I point the camera over towards Xavier, I'm looking at the metering there, and what I'm seeing is that my exposure overall is at about 0. So that means the overall scene's about medium brightness. All right, so we'll take a quick test shot. Here we go. Let's see what that looks like as it comes into the computer system. There we go. All right, so you can see how much ambient light is in the background, how much light is on Xavier. Okay, Xavier, I'm going to have you turn your right shoulder towards me. So basically, we're blocking out the sun even more. Perfect. And same shot again now, except no sun on the front of his body. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, super. So there's the shot. So that's what the ambient light looks like. Okay, so quick mental check for you. What would I do if I wanted more ambient light in the background? Shutter speed, right? So let's do that. The background in this case is the white wall and the window shades, but let's just pretend it's all pretty and we want more ambient light. So I need a longer shutter speed. I'm currently at a 2/50th. Let's just bring that up to, or let's bring it down to a 60th. So 2/50th, a 1/25th, a 60th. That is 2 stops brighter for my ambient light. Same picture, no flash. 1, 2, 3. All right, good job, Xavier. Oops. Let's look at the computer, get the results of that. And there, perfect. So here's the previous shot, dark, and there is the next shot, brighter. We're overpowering the sun. We're starting that whole process of how much of the sun do I want to influence the photo, okay? And so in this case, in the second photo, I wanted more sun. I want more oomph from the sun. All right, now I'm going to go turn on the flash. Okay, and we have a little camera rigged up inside the flash itself so you guys can see what I'm doing. So over here on my Nikon flash, it's currently set to off, and I'm going to set it for remote. And again, this is just the Nikon system. The Canon's different, Fuji's different, they're all different. Now what we see here is it says remote mode. I'm in manual exposure, okay, manual exposure. I'm in channel 5 in group A. And it's just sitting there waiting for me to do something with it. So if we go back to here now, on my camera, let's just go see what my settings are from my camera menu. Now remember, I'm controlling this through the radio system. So go flash control, flash group options. Group A, I'm currently at manual output, and I'm at 1/16th power. I don't know, is that good? Sure, it's a good starting point. So let's take a picture. All right, I'm going to move the flash in closer to Xavier. All right, so Xavier, are you a smiler or are you more of a serious guy? What's your kind of... Smiler. You're a smiler? Good, I like smilers. All right, Xavier, here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right, when we look at that image, cool. Not too shabby. So that was just a guess, So starting out, I just said 1/16th power, and it looks like the exposure for his face is about right. Now, there's some things that are annoying me a little bit. Xavier doesn't have a lot of hair on his head. So in order to solve that problem, we get a bit of shine here. I have to actually shoot at a steeper angle to the sun, or more like completely opposite of the sun. So I'm going to move my studio a little bit over here. So now the sun is literally right behind him. I'm going to have you bring that shoulder towards me a little bit more. Yep, good. And the background's not real pretty here, but that's okay. Here we go, 1, 2, 3. Nice. Now we see by moving the sun behind him completely, we don't get the whole shine off the top of the head, which is really important, I think, a lot of times. So we've minimized the impact of that. I'm going to call it an issue, the photo issue. Some people have longer hair, and so we need to move him this way, maybe to get a little bit of sun. The whole point is that by just positioning his body, working with the existing light, we can really get the photo we're after. Now, if I want to completely overpower the sun, if I want that background to drop away, because right now we have some yellow tape on the stairwell. Imagine this is an alleyway, right? It's an alleyway in a city, and there's something, I don't know, maybe there's some graffiti in the background you don't want. Well, how do we eliminate that? Shutter speed. So we'll go here on the camera, and I'm currently at a 60th. Now all I need to do is increase my shutter speed back up to the maximum sync speed of 1/250th, and we'll take that shot again. And now the background should drop out pretty well. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Nice smile. I'm liking it. Well, okay. Not super dark, but you can see increasing the shutter speed up to a 2/50th a second. The background is 2 stops darker. One of the things that's happening is we are getting some spillage, some spillover from this umbrella. So another solution is move him farther away from the background, or do high-speed sync, a much faster shutter speed. Or the last one we could do, ISO. I could bring my ISO down. I'm currently at ISO 800. I can go down to 400 or 200. So I won't do all of that, but I just want to make the point that you guys can control the light, you can work with the sun, and still produce fantastic results. Literally, all I have, this could be a $29 flash and a $30 umbrella. So $150, $180, you've got yourself the ability to overpower the sun. Pretty cool. Thank you, man. Okay, let's go. Actually, let's just take a quick question or two, if there are, because working with the sun is a big deal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, and then we're going to go to the cloudy setup. And I'll take off my camera.
Question that had come in earlier was, do you ever use LED lights outdoors?
Great. Love this question. And I think a lot of times the genesis of this type of question is cost. Sometimes you can get constant lighting, like LEDs, fluorescents, incandescent lights, and they don't cost as much as a flash and a strobe system. And the answer is you have to have some pretty honking high power LEDs to work outside. And to buy the type of LEDs like on a TV set, like if you watch the 7 a.m. America shows that are on TV, they have these huge, very high-powered LED setups. You're not going to be able to afford those, and they're just not practical. So my direction for you would be, don't use those for outdoor flash photography unless you can invest a lot of money in powerful systems.
One more, just kind of clarifying what you just taught us here. And Jose Vincent Photo had asked, how do you shoot strongly backlit subjects? So when you moved the sun was behind, Xavier, with your camera in aperture priority mode and your flash in TTL.
Okay, great. Yeah, so there's no right answer for what exposure mode that you use in the camera, manual, aperture, program, shutter priority, versus TTL and manual. It all works. Some of them are just more consistent than others. So let me talk about why I choose manual mode for a lot of my flash photography. Manual mode, by its very nature, is stable. When you set your ISO, when you set your shutter speed, and when you set your aperture, nothing is variable. So those are all fixed. TTL, on the other hand, so TTL flash exposure and TTL camera exposure are variable. And they react dramatically to what the subject is wearing and what the background is doing. So for example, this last week I shot an event, that fundraiser event. When I photographed someone at the event and they were wearing a white shirt, I was in TTL mode, that subject's face went very dark because TTL reacts from that and goes, oh, it's white, and I want to make it gray, right? It's white and I want to make it gray. TTL puts out less light. And then I photographed this guy. He was wearing an all black suit, and he was a black guy. And so now what the TTL system does is goes, oh, that's all black, and I need to make it gray. So what does it do? Way overexposes. So his face was blown out. So TTL has its own kind of idiosyncrasies that you have to learn to work with. What I find is a lot of times for this type of work, working in manual mode helps you understand what's happening. And as crazy as it sounds, I think you have to be a more advanced photographer to do well with TTL than you do to work well with manual exposure mode. You know, manual exposure mode is so, you just change one thing and then you see the results. In TTL, it's like, what sorcery is going on behind the scenes? How come it's so bright this time and how come it's so dark that time? So that's my suggestion. Well, the next thing that I want to do is I want to talk about overcast days. Now, I love shooting on overcast days. The reason why is because the light is soft, it's gentle, and my flashes don't have to work as hard. I don't have to overpower the sun because the light overall is dimmer, it's lower. So my flashes have an easier time. That means I can shoot more flashes per second. You know, my batteries last longer. So I love overcast. The downside of overcast, though, is that visually it's not as appealing. There's something about the sun that humans respond to. We like the sun, that warmth, that feel, that kind of cut, the edge in photography. You don't get that on a cloudy day. So I think of cloudy day photography and with my flashes are what's adding the edge, the oomph, the charisma to the photograph, okay? So, yeah, all those things I just said. It's much lower contrast. You know, a lot of times it doesn't matter if the subject is in the shade or they're underneath the tree or they out in the field. Generally, the lighting is about the same. One of the things that we have to worry about, though, on an overcast day is the shadow underneath the eyes. Okay, a lot of times it's subtle, but it's significant. I call them raccoon eyes. The reason why we have to think about that is because the light is from overhead, and all of the light basically falls straight down on the subject. So in a second, we're going to turn on the house lights. I'm going to show you what this looks like. So your goal as a flash photographer is to fill in those shadows and create a nice spark in the eyes. So this is what we have here. This is Remy. He's one of our parkour athletes. Later on, we're going to show you guys, we did some sports and action photos with these guys doing flips in the air. But here he's just standing for me at Gasworks Park. Cloudy day. And in fact, we're in this kind of structure, so the light is even lower and dimmer, and he wasn't getting any catch lights in the eyes. He had a very dark shadow under his face. I threw in a softbox, and you can see now we've lit up underneath his eyes. I also processed this a little bit, made it just ever so slightly edgy, a little bit grungy, because that's kind of what he is. He's an urban athlete, and I thought that would look good for him. So let me show you a shoot here in the studio on how to deal with overcast days. Cool? All right, I need a different model. You'll do it? All right. Let's turn on the house lights again. The overhead fluorescence. And you're basically going to stand in the same spot, about right here.
What's in the dark?
In the dock. And I'm just going to move this away. Let's see. What I want to show now, I'm going to stand next to you.
Yep, that's right.
And I just want to show that the light is all coming from overhead, okay? Coming from overhead. And if she looks up to the light, we fill in the shadows. But if she looks down straight, we start getting shadows underneath her eyes. And a lot of portraitists say, hey, I'm an available light photographer. And if you are, then you need to use a reflector to do it here I'm going to do with the flash. In fact, let me just show this real quick. Since I can, I'm instructing so I can do this. So this is what we could do, is we could bring in the reflector here, put your head down just ever so slightly, yeah. And then as I bring this in, you can see it really illuminates her face. It's quite simple to get a nice look on a cloudy day with just a reflector. So that's a $30 solution. And then what I'm going to be looking at is if I stand over here, which actually I'm going to do, is go ahead and look at me. I'm now looking in her face to see if I'm getting catch lights in the eyes. Now here's the thing. The thing with the reflector, though, is the reflector has to be under her face, right? And that means the catch light's going to be low on the eye. And if you're a catch light nerd, a catch light junkie, kind of like I am, you don't want the only catch light to be down low. A lot of times you want the catch light to be up higher, kind of like in the 10 o'clock or the 2 o'clock position. Well, if it's a cloudy day and I want to reflect light onto her face, that means the light's got to be like up here. Well, that isn't going to work with the reflector because no light's bouncing off of it. So a reflector only gets you so far on a cloudy day. So let's get all the way with our flash. Cool? So on a cloudy day, it doesn't really matter the position of the subject. Subject can be here, there, sitting, standing. You don't have to worry about shade, sunshine, grassy field, because the light's coming equally everywhere. So really what I'm doing on a cloudy day is I'm just paying very close attention to the background. Does the background look good? Do I have some bridge in the background? Is that what I want? Or do I have flowers back there? In this case, the background is spectacular. We have this great panorama scene of blinds. So it's gorgeous. Gorgeous. Same thing as I did before. I want to take, just to be repetitive here, I'm going to build the exposure. So I like building my exposure by turning my flash off. So I can just do that with this little switch here on the camera. Turns my flash off. And since it's a cloudy day, I just want to probably include a little more light, and I want the background to be a little bit more vibrant, so that's a longer shutter speed. So I'm going to go to a 60th of a second, make that background nice and bright. And here we go. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Great. Let's look at that photo. Yeah, okay, so I can already tell we need, yeah, I'll tell you to smile next time. I can already see in this photo it's a little bit dingy, a little bit dark. Nothing to do with our beautiful model, but everything to do with me, the photographer. So I want to add a little bit more light. So how do we do that? Shutter speed. Okay, so I'm going to add some more shutter speed. Well, now when I'm adding more shutter speed, what am I running up against? Because I'm currently at a 60th of a second. I'm running up against a blurry photo. So if I go down to a 30th, now I got to start thinking about turning on my lens vibration reduction or image stabilization. Maybe think about going to a tripod, something along those lines. But I'm going to risk it. I'm turning my VR on. Let's make sure that's active, and it is active. And again, this is a shot with no flash. Okay, this time you can smile. Oh, nice smile. Good job. And I think I was moving. Yeah, it's a little soft because I did that a little bit fast. But the point is I got it a little bit brighter, and I'm happy with that. And since I'm at a 30th of a second, and I'm feeling like I need even more light, my next option is ISO. So I'll bump up my ISO one more stop. And the cool thing about all of these modern cameras is you can shoot ISO 1600 all day long and still get fantastic images. So 1600, 3200, no problem. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Nice. All right, so now, so now the ambient light, I'm feeling good. Actually, that might be a little bright. I'm gonna end up dropping it down just a little bit, but I'm happy with where the ambient light is, the nice bright background. Okay, now I'm gonna add in the flash. So I'll turn this bugger on and wait till I got green light here on the camera and green light up here on the flash. And then I always do a visual check on the flash itself and make sure it says manual mode or TTL mode. And it currently says manual mode, so I'm happy about that. I'm going to position the light appropriately for her height. Okay. I'm going to have you bring your right shoulder towards me a little bit. You can go ahead and rotate your feet. Yeah, great. And remember I said I kind of want that catch light to be in the 10 o'clock or the 2 o'clock position. So bring this down just a little bit. Yeah, that'll work. And I think the last thing we did, we were at 1/16th power. Yeah, 1/16th power. So we'll leave it there at 1/16th power. Okay, here we go. This one's for real. Make it count. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm always listening for that beep, making sure it fired. Oh, not good. So I never do that actually when the client's on set. I never go, oh, not good. I go, ha, let's make another shot with a little more adjustment. Okay, so what did I do? Well, I allowed a lot more ambient light into the camera, and I'm at 1/16 power. I also increased my ISO, so my settings are way different than before on the sunny day. So now I have to really reduce the power of the flash, and we'll do that right now. So I was at 1/16 power, and you can see from that example photo we just took, that was way too much. So I'm going to go down to probably a 64th power, and we'll probably end up even less than that, probably end up at a 128th power. Okay, so I hit OK. And we take that shot. This one's really, really for real. Okay, oh yeah, mo better. It's already looking better. And if I zoom in, I'll zoom in. This might be a little uncomfortable for you, but yeah, so we got a nice catch light kind of up in that 10 o'clock position. Fantastic. And as I fine tune, I'm thinking it's still a little bright, and then maybe the background's a little bright. So I'm going to reduce my shutter speed. Increase my shutter speed. So I was at a 30th, and now I'm going to go, let's go to a 50th. And I'm going to reduce that power again on my flash. I think the flash is still too bright. And we'll go 1/64th minus 2/3 of a stop. So that's almost to 1/128th power. So very little flash. Okay, here we go. 1, 2.5. Sweet. Much more natural. We still have the nice ambient light exposure for the background. And I've got a nice catch light in her eye. And the shot just looks natural. It doesn't look like flash was the predominant feature, compared to, let's go back here a few pictures. This was our starting point. Obviously, we got a problem. And then we kind of fixed the problem. But even that photo right there is still too bright, in my opinion. It's obvious flash was used. Until we get to this point, subtle, gentle, and kind. So, thank you. You get a high five as well. Fantastic. Okay, so Kenna, let's answer some questions on ambient light photography.
All right, well, we do have a number of questions coming in about glasses and reflections on glasses, using flash photography, and how to get rid of them, how to approach that.
Okay, glasses, perfect. So you saw in this example here, we've got reflections. Glasses are the bane of all photographers.
Yep.
So if the person that you're shooting if the glasses aren't a part of them, like if it's not part of their persona, their look, the easiest solution is take them off, okay? But people like me, I don't wear contacts. And so if I saw a photo of me right now without glasses, it'd be like, that isn't me. So sometimes you have to live with it. Here's the thing. Take a shot, take a look. You'll hear me say that a lot. Take a shot. Do we have reflections? Yes, we do. So a little move, just a little tiny move from here to here can solve all of the issues. It's okay. If I go over here to the monitor, you see that we do have some reflection here up in this part of the glasses, but it's not blocking her eye, which is okay in my opinion. It's okay to have a little bit of reflection as long as it's not blocking the eyeball. I probably should have taken one more and have her turn her nose just a little bit, and then I've dealt with that. Another little tip I have for you is if you take the glasses and you just tilt them up like this, if they have longer hair, you won't see that in the final photo. And then when you look forward, it's hard to see that it's actually tilted. But what that does is it causes the reflection to go down towards the ground. So I actually like to tilt them up a little bit. And it works better with people with a little bit more hair, a little longer hair. And then the next thing is, your lighting positioning. Positioning the lights a little bit higher for people with glasses can help prevent the reflection on the glasses. When the person doesn't have glasses, then the light can be lower because you don't have to worry about, the glasses reflection. So wind glasses, a little bit higher on the light. Yeah, great question.
I've noticed that the first two in-studio people were probably the extremes of skin colouring that you can possibly get.
Yes.
How much does that play into your flash power, or does it at all?
Yeah, so the fundamental aspect of our question is, hey, how do I expose differently for, let's say, Caucasian versus Latino versus African American, okay? And the truth is that the reflectivity of your skin is actually quite significantly different. So a Caucasian reflects 2 to 3 more stops of light, 2 to 3 stops more light than an African American, than a really dark. I'm thinking like Seal, the artist Seal, very dark skin, versus, I don't know, the artist Mike Hagan. I never get outside, very pale and white. So how do we deal with that? Well, the truth is that the exposure for both races is about the same. The manual settings would be the same because you want the white skin to reflect more light. It's what it does. White skin does reflect more light than dark skin, okay? So the shot that I took of you of whatever that was, 1/64th power, will also work for Xavier at 1/64th power because naturally Xavier's skin reflects less light back to the camera, and we want it to be that way. So the way to think about flash photography is imagine the world, or imagine your subject as a gray card, and if you expose the gray card for gray, then everything else falls into place. So the white person, Caucasian person, is going to reflect more light naturally, fine. And the dark-skinned person is also going to reflect less light naturally, fine. So that said, sometimes, I'm hearkening back to this event that I shot. It's fresh in my memory because I shot it just 2 or 3 days ago. There was a guy that I shot. He was an ex-running back. He actually was a running back for Notre Dame, I think. Very dark-skinned guy. And I was photographing him, and then right after that, I went and photographed this lady who was a Caucasian gal. I actually had to add a little bit more light for the running back because he was absorbing a ton of light. And so the same exposure that normally would have worked for, how does this sound, a lighter-skinned black guy, didn't work for him because he was so dark. So sometimes I just had to add a little bit more. But be careful that you don't do too much. You don't want your black guys to be washed out. It's the skin color you want. So that was a lot of answer for a simple question. Just pay close attention. Does it look natural? I think that's the key. Does the reflecting back on the camera, does the reflectance from your flash look natural? If it doesn't, well, then it's so easy. Just add a little more flash or take a little away.
That kind of brought up an interesting thing because I shoot a lot of events too. And when you have two people of different skin tones, with post in consideration, is it better to use flash to lighter or darker skin tone? Or
yeah, so my rule of thumb is expose for the highlights, develop for the shadows. So what that means in real life is let's say a white guy and he's dating a black gal. So you want to expose it so the white guy's skin isn't blinking. So just kind of a little bit at the upper limit of the exposure. And then in Lightroom and Photoshop, I bring out the shadows. And so I'll use the shadow slider, or I'll use the brush tool, and I'll paint over the darker skin individual to bring them out of the shadows.